Hi, I'm Jennifer, and today we are covering the second sewing tutorial for the Emily brief. For this tutorial, we're going to be doing the youth size in the extra large for Emily. So let's take a look at the table. So this is the one that we're going to be demoing. The entire garment is sewn with what could be a home machine. I use my industrial that does both zigzag and straight, but you can do all these stitches on a home machine. I use a little bit of stabilizer on the side to help keep it from popping, but you can do this all on the home machine and you can go in and clean this up. It's not as pretty of a finish as with the overlock, but it's still doable. So there you go.
And it doesn't have to be pretty.
Okay, so before we actually go to the sewing machine, I want to, Emily, please don't push me out of the way.
Over there.
No, because I need to have the middle of the frame. I'm sure Sasha's going to climb in here in a second. So we actually want to go ahead and pin this. And so Emily's job of cutting is a little bit choppy. I guess we'll fix that in sewing. Okay, so you want to identify the front and the back. Pull the front of the fabric facing up. Then we want to take one of our lining pieces and put it so the front side of the fabric is facing the front side of the fabric. Now, if you cut anything like my daughter, your cutting could be all over the place. What we want to do is we want to try and get it as close as possible, lining it up, figuring out what the shapes are. So we have kind of like this little jog on this pattern piece, right there. So that little jog, that actually allows it to line up to the leg. So it's kind of a little bit far like that. So I'm gonna throw some pins in here. I don't like to put too many, especially with knits, because I'm only working with the overlock. Okay, so that is way off. So I'm actually just going to center it on here. So it's possible it moved a little bit, but it's knit, so you actually have some flexibility in kind of how it's laid out.
It's on knit?
Yep, that's knit too. So there's a little bit of forgiveness that you have on a knit fabric. Okay, so what we're also going to do is we're going to then take this piece, line it over, and we are going to then pin this one. Now I'm going to take the right side of the fabric and point it towards the wrong side. So at this point, both of these lining pieces have the right sides facing the back. So then we want to try and make sure we get all these lined up. Now you can certainly go in and stitch the one together and then stitch the other. I like to do them all at once. Is the cat's tail getting in the shot?
Yeah. Hey, I got one.
So it's,
Hi,
next time I will cut. Or if she needs more practice. Okay. So the idea of what we're going to be doing, and now I've got it pinned kind of in this direction. So this is going to be how we're going to be sewing it. So then we'll have a clean edge here and here. So I like to go ahead and have everything pinned together before I go to the sewing machine. So then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take, let's see, we'll pull one down. So I've got my right side, actually that's the wrong side, the right side, and then we want to basically have this one kind of in the same direction as that. So then this would be that wrong side. So I'm going to line that up here. So it depends on how you flip it over. It could be one way or the other. Honey, don't throw things on the cat.
So knit falls apart.
Okay, so we have that piece. Then what we're going to do is what we call the burrito roll. And you're going to take this piece, fold it down, and this piece, and fold it over. So then we can have that. And this. So when you look at it, yep, the burrito roll, because it looks like a burrito on the inside. So now we've got everything kind of squished in the middle. We're going to stitch on this side and this stitch on this side. So for hers, I'm actually going to do entirely with the home sewing machine. So to stabilize the seam, because I don't really want to do a zigzag, I want to do more of a straight stitch, I'm going to use this stabilizer and I'm going to stitch this down across the seam, and this will keep it from stretching out because we don't want this to stretch out and we don't want this to stretch out. So a straight stitch should work. Okay, go hit the stop button. You can start. So this pant I'm going to sew entirely with basically the zigzag and the straight stitch. So I've gone ahead and I already pinned this, and then I said I was going to use a stabilizer. Now this one has a little bit of stretch to it. I could use this one, that's not a problem, but I want to make sure that my seams are a little bit more enforced. So I'm actually going to use this one, which doesn't stretch at all. So, and it's also black, so it's easier to see as a contrast. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make sure I've got it so my pins are all facing the direction that I want to be sewing. So I'm actually going to switch my pins this way so I can send it through the machine this way. Okay. Okay, so as I'm going to be sewing, I want to go from about like where the tip is right here, so kind of there was an angle. Oh, you really did a choppy job sewing, cutting, didn't you, kiddo? We're going to try and go from basically this point right here to this point here, and the idea is that they should line up to the edge of the fabric. On the back side, it does. So, I'm going to get this lined up. Huh? Yep, you can switch the cameras. I'll leave it up to you, honey. Okay, so I've got this lined up. And what we can even do is we can actually start sewing on the, what do you call it, the stabilizer. Actually, I'm going to take my zigzag off. So I'm just doing straight right now. I am not going to do a back stitch because it's the knit and it could end up getting all pulled inside. So I'm just going to go ahead and I'm sewing this. It's at 3/8 of an inch. I'm just going to line, stitch right on that. Here I'm going to try and straighten up where the terrible cutting was, and I can use this actually as my guide, which kind of helps too. You can always cut and trim off later. Okay, so we just want to take a quick look. That looks good. There we go. So that looks good there. That looks good there. So I can clip off my stabilizer. And then my pins are in the correct direction for this side. Okay, you can switch, Emily. Okay, and then I'm going to line this up on this side as well. And we don't need to do a back stitch. As long as you're on that stabilizer. Take this and try and sew it straight across. Okay, one. Switch to one. Thank you. There you go. Okay, so we've got, right now we have stitched, you can see here, I've got my stabilizer here and there, and that'll keep this from stretching, which I mean it keeps the threads from popping. Okay, so I'm going to just kind of flip it right side out. So undo the burrito. And there we go. So we want to do a couple things. So we will end up having to sew the elastic on here, but sometimes it's a little tricky. And so I want to baste stitch this together and the side over here together, so that way I can trim up anything and make it look a little bit better. Okay, so I'm going to put I'm keeping it on my straight, but I'm just doing a basting stitch so it could come out. Okay, so switch over to one, Emily. And actually you could switch to three. There you go. So that's kind of cool. And this, I'm just going to go right kind of on the edge where they're attached. It doesn't have to be at a 3/8. I probably even make it kind of closer to a quarter or right on the edge. Okay, switch to one. Daughter is operating the camera. Okay, so this side looks like there might be a little bit of a discrepancy over here. So I'm going to pin these and I'm going to do my stitch again. So switch over to 3. Okay, so I'm going to kind of come right on the edge. Okay, switch to 1. Okay. Now, as you can see right here, oh, I'm still attached. Here I've got kind of a big gap over here. So what I'd like to do is I'd like to trim it up a little bit so I have a smooth transition from here to there. Now with this in mind, I may actually even want to kind of switch up and maybe do a slightly smaller seam allowance towards the back seam of the panty. Otherwise, she might not get enough coverage on here. But remember, her cutting was choppy anyway, so she could have cut large. So I'm going to look on this side, and that side looks actually pretty good. Just going to kind of clip a little bit.
It also hurts me at one point if it's too small.
What was too small?
Underwear.
Yeah, if they're too small, they'll hurt you.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I want to make sure you have enough coverage there, so I don't want to make it too small. Okay, so this is now the back side. So I'm going to use, to make it easy for you to see, we'll be using black elastic. So for this one, I like to do things a little bit differently. For some, I know I would do this differently if it was on the Pico elastic, but I know my daughter will not wear this if it's with the Pico elastic, so I'm just going to use my lingerie elastic. So I'm going to use this, so it's going to be on the back side of here, and I'm going to go in and get a zigzag stitch. Okay.
I thought you weren't going to do zigzag.
I am. I have to. Alright, so I'm just going to stitch on the elastic a little bit just to kind of get it started. And this makes it a little bit easier. So switch over to, yep, you got it. And so what I want to do is I want to line up the edge of the fabric to the edge of the foot on here, because this is actually a 3/8 of an inch for me. And so we want to make sure the edge of that zigzag, so probably a little bit less, since the zigzag's going to do a little wider. So I know this elastic's about 1/4 of an inch, so I'm going to leave like a little bit, like a 3/8 of an inch overlap at the top. But honestly, at the top and bottom, it's not that big of a deal. It's more at the crotch seam that becomes the deal. Okay, so as I'm sewing this, the elastic has a tendency to try and stretch a little bit, no matter whose machine it is. So you can see, I'm taking and I'm pulling it just a little bit. So I start here, and I'm pulling a little bit, and then I'm just going to zigzag that. Take it, pull a little bit. We don't want it so it's like this, and you let go and it comes like that. We don't want it to be tight. We want it to be comfortable. So just like a little bit of a stretch, which is almost like a 5 or 10% stretch. Probably 5% stretch. It's really just to make it so after we fold it, it will lay flat. On the elastic.
But probably if you don't, it will stretch, so then it would be too stretchy.
Yep, because it'll stretch out of shape. Now it'll probably fit just fine. It'll just look ugly. Okay, so now on to doing the same with the back. Now remember, she did a really funny cut here, so I'm going to try and figure out where that was. So I'm going to pull a little bit. I'm not going to sew a lot. It's about to the middle, I think. And then kind of come to where that middle point is. You're a very loud cereal eater. Almost to the end.
I love my honey bunches so much.
So you can see I'm never actually taken the elastic out of it. And I like to do this because it just makes it a lot easier to go together. Okay, so now we've got the legs. So same thing, just keeping that elastic there, kind of lining it right to the edge. And continuing on. So I have a little bit of a funny chop right there. And I'll do my best to kind of make a little curve. And so right over here, I'm actually going to bring this right to the edge because remember I had to chop stuff off and I don't want to lose any width on the butt. Okay, so now in the crotch area, if I didn't trim anything off, we want to make sure that we keep that right width, otherwise it could become too wide. And if you bring it too far over, it becomes too narrow. And you don't really need to stretch it at all in this area because you've already got the 2 layers, which should help stabilize the stretch on the fabric. And we don't want it to be bunching up underneath at the crotch area. It's not comfortable. Okay, so wait till we kind of come around this curve in the front, and then we can start pulling again on the leg. We'll find pins later. I'm not worried about it right now. Okay, and then we've got the last bit.
Sasha looks so cute.
Honey, you need to be paying attention to the camera. You're my camera person. You can't walk away from the camera.
I'm paying attention.
Okay, well. I'm pulling just a little bit in here. This is the front leg. I'm not going to pull almost anything on this front tight curve because I know on her it would be uncomfortable. There's no reason to pull anything in this area. And then I'm going to take it a little bit wider since we had to trim off of it. And then I can take and pull a little on the way. Okay, so we are done with the elastic. Okay, so camera 1. So now we've got this. The elastic's all in place. I'm actually going to wait to turn it over and finish it until after we've attached our side seams together.
Yeah, because you had to make it like that.
Okay, so now some of those pins, oh actually I've got 2 pins. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to line up my side seam. Pin through those elastics for some reason.
That's probably hard.
That is a little bit hard. Okay, so this I'm actually going to stitch with my straight stitch. And I'm going to use the stabilizer again. So as we're going in, we want to be careful on where the stabilizer goes. I'm going to end up on the floor. Oh, here it is. Okay, so switch to camera 2.
I'm doing 3.
Or 3? Yeah, we can do 3. So I'm going to put this in here.
Why do you have to do a stabilizer?
Well, because we don't want it to stretch, and a zigzag stitch just looks ugly. We did it on the boy short, but we don't have to do it the way we did on the boy short. Okay, for this one I did do a back stitch. I don't think you really necessarily need to right now because we're going to be folding the elastic over and finishing it, and that'll kind of reinforce that. And so I'm actually just keeping, got the stabilizer under there. Do the same thing on the other side. Switch back to one.
You have to tell me when.
Huh?
You have to tell me
Okay,
when.
we don't need any more of the stabilizer, that's done. Okay, now we're gonna flip it over so we can kind of see what it looks like so far. And it's not bad. You know, we want to keep the side from stretching. Now I did a terrible job lining them up on this side. This side it looks a little bit better.
Yeah.
And this really could have been Emily's cutting. We're gonna compare the two sides together. Yep, I think it was the cutting because this piece is a lot higher. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna actually take at this point and we can fold it under, and then we're gonna do that second row of zigzags. Now, what's wonderful about this is that we can actually fold this under, see? And we can just stitch straight across and you'll never know that those don't line up. So when you're finished, everything will be nice and clean.
Aren't you gonna do it the other way so then you can see the elastic?
No, because you don't like the elastic. When the elastic touches you, it irritates you. You've complained about it every time I've made you underwear. So this one we're just doing a plain lingerie elastic. Okay, so I'm going to fold this down. I'm going to start on the side that actually looks decent. And then we've got get my zigzag back. Let's get physical. Okay, so I am now going to take and we're going to switch over to camera 3, right? Okay, it's got 2 shots. So I'm going to then zigzag, so I'm folding it under right at the edge of that elastic, and that should be right where that 3/8 inch seam allowance is. Oh, my zigzag's too wide. Yep, that's okay. It skips stitches when it's a little bit wider. I've corrected it.
Yeah, that's huge.
Yeah. Ooh, okay. So I'm just kind of taking it, rolling it, pulling it.
So then it's flat.
And then it'll be beautiful. So you can see you do not need an overlock machine to make underwear. Now this is a little bit fancier than a home machine. This is my industrial machine, and honestly I like love this machine. I gave my home machine to Emily because I just wasn't using it anymore.
Yeah.
But I don't think she uses it either.
But I do use it sometimes.
Oh, you do sometimes?
Because my hand crank machine isn't working.
I know your hand crank machine hasn't worked for over a year. Some gears all jammed. So this was where that mess up was, so I kind of folded it over and we forced it to look a little bit better. So the finished edge.
But underwear doesn't have to
Underwear doesn't have to look pretty.
look pretty. Because it's under everything.
Well, some people like to show off their underwear, honey. I know. You just like to wear comfortable underwear. Okay. Okay, so let's take a peek at that top. So it looks nice.
Oh, that's
It's all
much
edged.
prettier.
It is really pretty, isn't it? All we have to do is finish the rest of it. Okay, so we're gonna zoom through the rest of it. Now, because of your side seams, I'd probably try and keep the side seam in the same direction. So when you fold over kind of the edge, and kind of keep it. Otherwise, you could end up with a little bit of irritation there from it flipping sides. And I've got a jam in there. Hold on. Come on, something's stuck in the foot. Get out of the foot.
I was saying too, because that's sometimes.
Well, it's stuck in the foot right now. There you go. One of these days I'll let you use this machine.
But mine is just like that one.
Not really.
Mine also has zigzag.
Home machines are a little bit different. It does have a zigzag, but you don't know the power of industrial. I love this machine. Best purchase ever. It's probably the most expensive
Machine.
industrial machine I ever bought. I always get mine used. This one was used also, but this one was
Really expensive.
probably spent more. Actually, I guess my first cover stitch I spent a lot of money on too. But I ordered that on eBay and it was delivered, so. Oh, I remember the days of being able to buy good stuff on eBay. Not anymore. And flip over to the other side. Okay, I'm going to check the side it's angled on. See, I'm just kind of taking little bits at a time. And you notice I'm also pulling the fabric a little bit as I'm sewing, just so there's no bunches, no clumps inside the fabric.
I'm thirsty.
Okay, let's switch over to camera one. Okay, besides having to clean up the threads, I think that's pretty darn cute. So this fits her pretty nice. Actually, kind of sits a little bit like that, but it gives her nice coverage in the butt. This one actually it looks really good on her.
I'm also wearing that type too.
Is that the one you're wearing today?
Yeah.
See?
But the red one.
And I'm actually slowly going through my entire scrap collection of knits so I can make us underwear. Because I'm tired of hauling these things around. So, there we go. And stuff. Okay.